There it is. All right, I'm Ray Hanania,
I'm Bill Lipinski.
I'm Bert Odelson.
and this is Two Guys on Politics with our guest again. We brought him back, Burton Odelson, a well-known attorney who, an attorney friend of mine said you're the second most important municipal lawyer in Illinois. So I'll let you figure out.
I don't know who the first is.
We were going to talk about an issue that Bert has dealt with in the past, and about the Second Amendment, gun control. Bert, you brought up a good point when we talked about this, right? When was the Second Amendment first passed? It was
the framers of our Constitution back in 1776. After we declared our independence, they then got together at the Constitutional Convention and moved from the Articles of Confederation in drafting the Declaration of Independence and the amendments that flowed from there. The Second Amendment, if I'm correct, it was somewhere in 1780 to 1790, somewhere in there. Yeah. So it dates back to the very beginnings of our country, and the amendments to the original Constitution have flowed through the years, adjusting to whatever issue is hot in the country, whether it be the 14th Amendment or it be the suffrage amendment, or depending on what the hot issue was and how we had to change. And we changed our Constitution by drafting amendments. One of the first being the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and that actually was introduced in, I was looking it up, in 1789,
okay,
and then adopted in 1791, and it was defined as the right to bear arms.
Now, what was the Second Amendment prior to that time?
There wasn't any.
There wasn't any.
No, there was no federal rule about bearing arms. The Constitution didn't talk about it. So whatever the reasons were, and I'm sure digging deep, we can find why the Congress felt it necessary to pass a constitutional amendment, which of course had to be passed by 3/5 of the states. And back then, I don't know if it was still 13 or 14 or 15, whatever the states were, 3/5 of the states had to approve it to be our law of the land. And of course, that has not been changed up until today.
And then, of course, they passed the Constitution, right? And then after passing the Constitution, issues came up, correct? That they said, hey, we have to define these better, like the First Amendment for religion and free speech. Right. And then the Second Amendment. Do we know why they felt that the Second Amendment had to be passed?
As I sit here, I couldn't tell you why. I can only guess. But I think Bill's older than me. Maybe he knows.
Yes, I may be older than you, but I wasn't around. I have no idea when that was. If I had been there, I am sure I would have written that Second Amendment so everybody could clearly understand it today, and we wouldn't have the controversy about it. But
go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
People talk about amending the Constitution, and we did at one time amend the Constitution. Now you have to have a vote of the House and the Senate to do it. Then you have to send it out to the states to do it. Do you think it's possible to pass any kind of new amendment today, or to modify, change, do away with any amendment we have today?
I don't think, well, that's a good question, but to do away or modify an amendment is the same procedure as to add another amendment. And that, as you said, Bill, we got to go through the House and the Senate, and then it has to go to the individual states to vote on, and you need 3/5 of the states to approve either eliminating, modifying, or adding to the amendments we have now. If you look at, I don't even think we get to the second step, and that is to the states. When you look at the division in the House and the Senate, unlike when you were there, I think, and I want to speak for you.
No, go ahead. When I was there, we did work together. There are many things that was in the days of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, who, philosophically they disagreed quite a bit, but after everything was said and done, they could sit down and have a cup of coffee and a piece of cake together.
Right. And that's not possible anymore. And unfortunately, so that being the case, how do you ever get a piece of legislation like that out of the House and the Senate? I don't know that you can at this time.
Has the Supreme Court ever come close to, say, a 5-4 decision on the Second Amendment? Right now we kid around about the only thing, if you understand the Second Amendment as it was written back, what was it, 1779?
1791 it was passed.
Okay. I mean, that's all we had was a musket and then some kind of handgun that shot one ball also. Have we ever come close to, interpreting that I'm talking about the Supreme Court doing this, making it legal that the AR-15 or repeating rifles, or Ray likes to talk about the Gatling gun. Have we ever come close to having any kind of decision pertaining to that? Or has we simply interpreted the Second Amendment as meaning any weapon that comes along?
I don't know of a case, and I don't think the United States Supreme Court has interpreted what type of weapon and can everyone have one. Their interpretation of the Second Amendment up until now has been, do you have a right to bear arms, which is what it says, or don't you? And I don't, Ray, do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I was just going to read.
Can you read it? Listen to it. Just
yeah. The Second Amendment reads, "A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed."
Well, wouldn't you think that you have to have a militia set up by the state? I think I would interpret what you just said is the state has to set up a militia, and then you have to be somehow brought into the militia, and then you can bear arms.
I mean, that's one reading of it. Correct. Yeah,
I was going to say the whole point of the whole, when you look at this, first of all, the way they spoke and the way they addressed issues, and in the context of the 18th century, it's amazing that we still haven't updated this Second Amendment to bring it into today's world, because we don't have militias in the United States anymore, do we? None that are legal, I don't think. And the security of the state is defined now by our military, I guess, which would be the militia.
Right.
The militia today is the National Guard of every state.
Correct.
Right?
Well, they may call.
Go ahead.
Federal wise would be, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, but state wise, you're right. It's the reserves. Correct. So do they have a right to bear arms? Well, of course they do, because they're defending us. But who else has a right to bear arms? I mean, that's the expansion of it. Our police authority, but it's been expanded to the FOID cards, and there's never been a regulation or control over what type of weapon. Oh, I take that back. I think during your time, Bill, there was a 10-year period where the Fed, right, where they
to bar the AR-15. Yes, absolutely. And it's a shame we didn't do that permanently, but all we could get was 10 years.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask you, I don't want to take Ray's job away from being the commentator here, but why did you only make it 10 years?
That's all we could get approved. It was a miracle that we got 10 years approved, quite frankly. I wish it had been longer, but that's all we could get at the time. And we had to be thankful for that.
Is it like political fear, you think, that people don't want to go back and say, let's rewrite the Second Amendment to make it, in today's context? I mean, everybody has an interpretation of the Second Amendment, because I don't think it's clear what it really means. That's why we have so many interpretations now. When you look up the Second Amendment, it'll say, here's a bunch of interpretations in terms of what you believe. The court embraces an interpretation, but even then, we're still talking about something that, you know, is so distant from today's reality.
Yes,
They had handguns, not automatic, you know, AK-47s and AR-15s and
they had revolvers even. You just get one shot. But Bert, has
right.
ever got to the Supreme Court and argued, you know, that, okay, the militia now is the National Guard, okay, and they have a right to bear arms, but that's as far as it goes?
No, to my knowledge, that has not gone up to the Supreme Court. And to answer what Ray said, and again, Bill, I'm sure you're gonna weigh in on this, and I think you're gonna agree with me. It is about money indirectly. It's about the lobby. It's about the NRA. It's about who they support and don't support. Right, Bill? I got to kick it over to you.
Well, I think that the NRA was very strong and very powerful for quite a long period of time. But today, as far as I know, the NRA is bankrupt. They don't have anywhere near the money they had once upon a time. They do not have the influence that they once upon a time had. But voters in certain districts, you know, strongly believe that they have a right to own a shotgun, you know, a repeating rifle, a revolver, and some of them believe they have a right to own any weapon that is out there. You go to Southern Illinois, and the culture down there is everyone has a gun. People are raised with guns. One of the first things they do when they can stand up is, you know, be given an opportunity to fire a weapon. You know, now where I come from, most people say confiscate them all. Well, that's not practical, and that's never going to be done in this country. But unfortunately, we're divided there. And if we had reasonable people on both sides, I'm
Right.
sure we could, you know, ban the AR-15. We could do much better background checks. There's numerous things that we could do and still not take anyone's weapon away from them. And then not most of these people, like in Southern Illinois, they're hunters. That's why they want to have the weapon.
Right.
You know, I have a son-in-law. He's one of the few people from Southern Illinois that never fired a gun in his life because his parents were anti-guns. So they are one of the few people, they were farmers, one of the few people that just did not believe in the gun culture. They were born and raised in Southern Illinois, but they didn't believe in it.
Well, listen, the NRA is popular because it had a lot of public support. It isn't like it's a small group. They got huge support. And let's face it, we're a country of, you know, majority rule. Although I think we should change that. We shouldn't have 50% ruling anymore. It should be 2/3. If you can't get part of the other side to agree with you, then maybe there's something wrong with the law if you can't get consensus. But in this case,
well, I don't know if I want to stay on this podcast or not. Okay,
well, we're
being go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say no, don't be sorry. I was going to say that I'm sure that the NRA's mission is to prevent any changes because they believe that if you can make a change, it won't stop. It'll continue to eliminate all the things they stand for. But I think the middle ground, and I think that's where you guys stand too, is there is a middle ground that we should get to that is beyond what the context was from 1791. I can't even read that and make full sense out of it.
Correct. Of course you can. And yesterday, in watching the 10 o'clock news and watching the marching that's going on, you know, from the Highland Park terrible happenings and how they're having these, you know, with the shirts and marching. I saw just a glimmer, I thought last night, of maybe a movement going where you could move some Republicans off of where they are to come to some type of semblance. And I was thinking about Bill last night, asking him that question about how did you reach compromise and get a 10-year ban?
Right.
That was a long time. 10 years.
Unfortunately, I don't remember exactly how it did come about. I was not involved in the negotiations because as far as I was concerned, whatever the most extensive limiting of weapons could be passed, I was for. But I was never involved in, you know, in any kind of negotiations with Republican members or the Senate or anything like that. So I can't help you. All I can do is tell you, you know, I supported it. I wish it could have been longer. I hope we can do something today. But I have to disagree with you, Bert. Yeah, there's a lot of activity going on, and there's a lot of people marching on Washington, but I just don't see anything changing. I do not see anything changing. And unfortunately, you know, there have been times, let's be honest, Republicans usually support gun rights. Democrats usually want to eliminate them. There have been times when I was in Congress, okay, when after I've left Congress, where the Democrats have controlled the presidency, they've controlled the House, they've controlled the Senate. And what effort have they made?
You're right.
Okay, none whatsoever. The
You're
only
right.
one was the one where we did got it done for 10 years ago. And that frankly was I remember now it was much more of a effort by the Republicans coming to the Democrats and saying, you know, we've got a few votes we can put on it. Let's do something.
Well, the conservatives also have a religious perspective on this, because the Second Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights, which are 10 amendments, and that 10 is reflected from the period of the 10 commandments that are in the Bible. It isn't, it isn't coincidence that those 10 are there, because back then the Bible was one of the most popular books that was read by the people who wrote the Constitution. So it's hard to think in terms of, hey, let's go back and change the 10 commandments, but the Bill of Rights, these 10 amendments, I think we need to go back and we need to look at them and put them in today's context. Some of them, the principles should stay the same, like the First Amendment, freedom of religion, free speech. But the idea of the Second Amendment, it's so confusing. It's not a clear sentence. I'm not even sure what the real meaning is, other than taking a phrase out and saying the right to bear arms. But it sounds like that's in the context of being in a militia,
right,
and having protection,
right,
from the British, who would want to take us back and control us.
And being a lawyer and still, as long as I have been, and a litigator, and still having faith in courts, not all courts, but some courts, I still have some faith that if the right case is brought, even to this conservative court, even to this 6-3 or 5-4 court, there can be some limitation in the way they interpret the Second Amendment, that it just wouldn't be willy-nilly. You can have cannons in your house now. I'll probably die thinking that there is some semblance of order in the higher courts. Because if we don't believe in the highest court, and if we don't believe in the presidency, then we've lost all of our rights, really, under the Constitution.
That's very, very true. And what if all 50 states barred AR-15s? Okay, now all 50 states do that. Now someone takes that, though, to the Supreme Court and says that's unconstitutional. Justice, how would you rule?
Sitting here right now,
Yes.
I would say that the state has a right to regulate the activities within its own state, and having guns is something peculiar just to the state itself. So I would say they can do that. That's what
the states supersede the United States Constitution.
No, it doesn't. It's interpreting the United States Constitution. And I would say, if I was sitting on the United States Supreme Court, if the state wants to do it that way, in fact, Bill, here's the irony. Highland Park has had an ordinance on their books banning
Yeah, I've heard that.
yes. What
The AR-15.
Yeah, AR-15s. It does do no good if one municipality does it. May do some good if a state does it, but we border other states. So really the impact would be if all 50 states did it, or the United States government, like you did it. I think the Supreme Court, even this Supreme Court, would say that it's constitutional that you can ban assault weapons state by state. I do.
Yeah, and I don't think that, we're not living in a reasonable world, though. Today's very polarized. Back when, they were able to get that 10-year ban on the semi-automatic or automatic weapons, I believe. They were more willing to talk with each other. But now we have such a polarized political system that it's impossible. And it's one side dictating to the other side, whoever's in control, rather than building a consensus. There's no way we're going to ever change the Constitution in today's world, or even get a decision. It's going to come to 50% plus one vote. It would be nice, like I said, if we change the world to say you need a consensus. You need 60% of the people to agree on something, and that forces people to compromise.
But this,
The Supreme Court just ruled on the abortion situation and said, Senate, what in essence it said, the people should make the decision. And the body that makes the decision for the people are each individual state.
correct.
Okay, so I would think that a very sharp attorney could take that decision on abortion, take it to the Supreme Court and get a ruling on guns. You know, you said, take it back to the people. We had a referendum in our state. It passed 65-35 to ban all weapons. We passed in the legislature, the governor signed it, a law to do that. Now we go to the Supreme Court based upon your decision in regards to Roe v. Wade. We should be able to do this.
And you're right. And if that case would make it to the Supreme Court, I think it would succeed. That it's an individual state's right, not a federal right. Just like the abortion issue is a state right to regulate the health welfare of its citizens. And what better issue than the health and welfare by virtue of dying by way of a AK-15? It's tragic. You see the division with Roe v. Wade. You see how the states break down. That's kind of our country right now.
Yeah.
As far as where our country is as a whole in regards to individual state rights versus federal rights.
But
Yeah,
when I used,
Go
go ahead, Bill.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I was going to say when I was at the Sun Times, and I did a radio show on WLS on Saturday and Sunday. It was like 5 hours each day. It was a lot of fun. The one thing that they told me was, don't bring up the two issues of argument that are irreconcilable and unresolvable. And they were abortion and gun rights.
Right.
As soon as you brought that up,
Yep.
as soon as you brought those two issues up, the public seemed to separate. It became angry. And it got away from discussion. So if you wanted to talk about anything, you could get people who didn't agree with somebody to say, well, I can see your point. You know, maybe there's a way to find a way to do this, but you bring up abortion, you bring up the guns, those two issues, you could never get anybody to come together on those.
You know, we were talking about the states, probably for the most part, the states that are banning abortion, okay, would give the right to carry a bazooka if you want to have a bazooka, okay? And then you just flip it the other way.
Right.
Those that are all for abortions, okay, on demand would probably say, you can't have a pea shooter, nothing, okay? That's how bad this country is divided at the present time.
That's
It's
correct.
It's horrendous.
It's extremism, and we don't have a centrist view, because there is a centrist view on abortion or the right to life. There is a middle ground, I think, that, I'm against, even getting into abortion, I'm against anybody just using abortion as a form of birth control. I don't like that. I like restrictions on it. And, the better thing is abstinence or preventing yourself from, getting pregnant, and making men more responsible and making women more responsible.
That's another whole show, Ray. That's another whole show.
No, I know it is. It's true, but it's very similar to gun control. We can't get into a middle space where we say, hey, yeah, I can have a 38 or a handgun in my house, where I can feel protected. But why do I need an AR-15? Like you had mentioned in Highland Park, they have a law that bans AR-15s. The problem is with law-abiding people follow laws. The people that are not law-abiding don't follow the laws. So what's the point of the law?
Well, let me tell you, the point of the law and the United States Supreme Court is that the United States Supreme Court does change with the times and the pressure. And I'll give you the best example that pops into my head. Prior to Brown versus the Board of Education, I think it was 1954, the United States Supreme Court said it's okay to segregate. It's okay to have white schools. They said it was okay in the United States Supreme Court.
Equal. It had to be equal, separate but equal.
Separate, but right. And that's the way that court interpreted it until Brown versus the Board of Education. And then we got to be rational. But that's how our Supreme Court goes. And it goes kind of with the tide of the nation.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. This abortion situation, though, has, I'm pro-life, but that decision certainly has flown in the face of an enormous amount of opposition.
Yeah.
And it just further divides us, but I think I'm repeating myself, so.
No, you're not. It does further divide us just along the same lines as the gun issue. Not that they're similar, but it similarly divides us. And
Right. And then you throw on top of all this, the elections and the politics, and you're never really going to get to, people are going to play to a certain view if they believe it will help their election, or against something if they believe it's going to hurt their election. So it's unfortunate. We really can't have a real discussion, and it's too bad though. But I know, Bert, you had mentioned something earlier, and maybe this can be a future topic, but this whole idea of having a constitutional convention for the state of Illinois, we should probably have a constitutional convention for the United States.
Yeah,
but we should save that for a future show if you want.
We should, because I have a lot of opinions, and I'm sure Bill does, about a state constitutional convention, which we had in 1968-69, which led to our 1970 Constitution. Well, it's 50 years since then. Been a couple changes. One of the changes, we're talking to each other over the internet, not live. There's so many changes that have happened in 50 years. Our Constitution has to be updated.
Now, I was around then. In fact, I remember a young man, rather short, rather skinny, red hair, coming around, knocking on my door, telling me that he was running for the Constitutional Convention.
Yes, he was.
His name was Michael J. Madigan. It happened. And I
remember that.
Support him. And his running mate was a guy by the name of Jack Foy.
Wow.
I don't know whatever happened to Jack, but I think we all know what happened to Mike Madigan. I assume that changing the Illinois Constitution would simply be the House and the Senate and the governor approving a new document, and then it gets shipped out to the voters?
No, they have to approve a referendum to go on the ballot, and the voters have to decide whether there will or there won't be a constitutional convention. And that was defeated. That was on a ballot in the late 80s, I believe. And Illinois, the people said no to a constitutional convention.
Does it require a majority vote or a supermajority of voters?
I believe a supermajority. I believe.
Yeah. See, and that to me would, the fact that they could get a supermajority is good. That means that the majority of people didn't want it, but 50-50, that creates division, doesn't it?
No, a lot of.
I know, I get it. It's not that I'm against our system of voting. I think it's really important, but on some issues, we got to force ourselves to find consensus, and it's not going to happen with this almost equal division that we have in our country.
Bert, does the new Constitution for Illinois have to go back to the voters then, or are the voters finished participating when they okay a constitutional convention?
They're done. Oh no, they have to elect the con members.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Like you said, that's when Madigan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have to elect who they want to represent them, and then once the document's done, it's done.
Well, I'm going to close my portion of this podcast by telling everyone a story that occurred once upon a time. I got on my United Airlines flight to come home from Washington, D.C. I sat in my first seat right on the aisle in the first row because I was the chairman of the aviation subcommittee. And somehow when I got that position, I also got this seat, okay? Now sitting next to me was a guy who was rather well-built, nice looking fella. And he says to me, how did you get that seat? And I says, well, I always get this seat. He says, well, I'm Anton Scalia, a judge of the United States Supreme Court. I says, yes. He says, I should get that seat. I says, you're an appointed official. I'm elected by the people of America. I said, there's no comparison in who's important and who's not. And he laughed, and we had a wonderful conversation coming back to Chicago. I'm finished for this podcast.
Well, I could see how that incident, I know, Bert, you have a story that kind of relates to that, but before you go to it, I can see how that incident, if it happened today, would suddenly be captured on video, on cell phone video, and go viral across the country and be spun into things that had nothing to do with the reality of what took place.
Right. Yeah, I'll save my story. My story is a little bit longer. I know we've run a little late, Ray.
We're good, though. We're good. Oh, no. We have a few minutes. We're good. Go ahead.
Go ahead
if you want to.
Bert.
So the every lawyer's dream, I think, who litigates is to get to the United States Supreme Court. I did once as a special state's attorney of Cook County, representing the Cook County Officers Electoral Board. And I'll cut all the middle part out, which is very interesting and political as we went up through the court system involving the Harold Washington Party with Gene Pincham running for president of the Cook County Board. The Harold Washington Party was removed from the ballot, was kept on the ballot by the Electoral Board, removed by the Circuit Court, removed by the Illinois Supreme Court. We appealed to the United States Supreme Court, who accepted our case. I got to argue the first Monday of October. The first day that Clarence Thomas was the appointed and served, didn't partake in my case. I was lucky enough to win the case 7-1, with the dissenting justice being Anton Scalia, who was a strict conservative, saying that the words of the Constitution and the amendments should be strictly followed. And he thought the Harold Washington Party, for all the reasons, should not have been on the ballot, whereas all the 7 other justices said that they should. So that was my Scalia moment. And he wrote a nice, interesting dissent in my case, which I still refer to from time to time.
I would think that would be something to practice before the United States Supreme Court. I wonder if it's too late for me to go to law school.
It's never too late, Bill.
Never too late, Bill.
All right. Anyway, thank you. This is a great discussion. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
I'm Bert Odelson.
And we will talk to you guys next Thursday on Two Guys on Politics.
Thank you.
With our guest. Thank you.
Take care.